many decades was that? Oh dear. Well, let's pass over that one quickly. Many, even most of the proscriptions and prescriptions in religious codes are non-contentious. Nevertheless, religious values, some of which promote sexual freedom and the rights of women, are often the values that the religious oppose most viscerally. There's no contest about the country whose retreat from liberal values has been the speediest. It's Ireland, hands down. From inception in 1922, it resolved to be an exemplar Catholic state. It even banned contraception in the Constitution, and in practice elevated the clergy so they became, in effect, above the law. Both actions contributed indirectly to Ireland later having the highest per capita rate in the world of clerical abuse of minors. Great efforts were made, including in the Pope's own office, to keep this quiet and shield the church from accountability. Less than 25 years ago, however, the horrible truth began to emerge. And in its wake, Ireland's piety, which until then had been in a class of its own among European nations, was shattered. Over ensuing years, as the full extent of the abuse began to emerge, mass attendance and recruitment of priests plummeted. Priests routinely stopped wearing clerical garb in the street for fear of being spat upon. So great was the disdain. And by 2015, Ireland was in the vanguard of European countries to legalize same-sex marriage, demonstrating the transition, so rapid, to a liberal electorate that was dictating sexual matters. And hot off the press from the country at the other end of the spectrum, Afghanistan. As if the wholesale destruction of women's rights was not enough, it's bringing in a ban on images of all living things, presumably excluding plants, who knows. Even the eyes of fish on restaurant menus will need to be blurred. As Stephen's just alluded to, sadly, secularism is on the back foot in the largest supposed secular countries, the United States and India. This conference is a good opportunity to take stock of liberal values in the UK, where we've come from, where we're going to, and what more we can and should do. There was a particularly impressive advance in secular liberal values in the mid and late 19th century. For example, secular divorce, introducing affirmations, thank you to our founder Charles Bradlaugh, and cutting down the power of ecclesiastical courts. The next burst of secularizing legislation was not for nearly a century, seemingly reflecting the zeitgeist of the 1960s. The abolition of capital punishment, liberalization of abortion law and divorce, as well as the abolition of theatre censorship, also the partial decriminalization of sex between men in private. And while the proportion of the population that is Christian and church-going has gone down like a stone, the influence of the C of E and its evangelical wing remains disproportionately strong. An evangelical takeover to place illiberal Christians in the upper echelons of the church, the civil service, military, and prisons has been in train since World War II, for example, through charities such as the Titus and Owen Trusts, and they continue to leave their mark. Ironically, though, this illiberality is now undermining the church. Internal wrangling on gay matters is causing unprecedented institutional dissent. For example, exasperated congregants are leaving the church in droves, and even parliamentarians have signaled that they've had enough, and the established church, must embrace same-sex marriage. Some minority religions have become much more powerful in their anti-liberal influence, bolstered partly by the deliberate conflation of religious criticism with racism. That's why we're fighting definitions of Islamophobia that risk undermining freedom of expression. I was concerned by a throwaway remark by Nicky Campbell at his Bradlaugh lecture. We couldn't any longer screen the Big Questions TV series that there used to be on Sunday mornings that he hosted. Seemingly, some of the topics covered, if discussed openly, would prove too offensive for some now. What a wake-up call. Many British Muslims passionately embrace the values of the United Kingdom. However, it's crucial to address a growing concern regarding the rise of fundamentalism among younger generations. 30 years ago, only a small proportion of Muslim women and practically no girls wore burqas. How different it is now. Historically, successive generations of immigrants have become progressively more assimilated into the mainstream culture. But some of the trends that are emerging threaten social cohesion and could turn into a break on liberal values. And from a small base, ultra-Orthodox Jews are becoming more assertive, for example, on resisting attempts to at least register all children not attending a regulated school. I'm hopeful they'll fail. And I cannot but mention our shameful, indeed shameless, place in this country as one of very few, with compulsory acts of worship in all schools, allowing proselytizing religious education and religious teacher preferment in publicly funded schools, not to mention publicly funding schools with religious ethos. In a large part, they remain thanks to the power of the bishops in the House of Lords and to successive governments being fearful of taking the bishops on. We've seen that. While some non-believers oppose assisted dying, and the majority of religious people support it, the hardline opposition comes from religious figures and others whose opposition is based on religion, but who often find it more opportune to express their opposition using some other pretext. I'm hopeful that the new House of Commons will pass an assisted dying bill to give terminally ill the terminally ill autonomy over their own bodies. But if it does, how confident can we be that the Lords, apologies to the one Lord here, on average much older and more religious than their Commons counterparts, will bow to the will of the Commons and indeed the country? Who knows? We'll have to see. The number of self-identified active secularist MPs in the UK and in Brussels is a fraction of what it was. Secular parliamentarians may think that the fight is over now, as the non-believers outnumber the Christians. It isn't. Even if they don't use the word, most people are secularists, at least to some degree. But we have our work cut out for us. We all need to fight more actively for secular liberal values in every way we can, or we will cede even more ground. Today, we're fortunate in being joined by many speakers who are doing just that. I'm sure, like me, you're keen to hear from them. So that's all from me for now, and enjoy today's conference. Thank you.